Hi guys, so for this video I'm going to use this yarn. It's in brand Yarn B. The recommended knitting needles for this yarn are in size 9mm or in US size 13, but I've actually used knitting needles in size 7mm instead of 9mm as the label recommends. So I'll start by making a slip knot. This will be counted as a first stitch. So now I'll turn my work around, then I'll grab this yarn just like this, twist it, and then I'll pass this stitch into our needle. So this will be our first increase, and this, by the way, will also be our second row. So now that we have 2 stitches on our needles, the first stitch I'll just pass it on my right needle, and then I'll knit the second stitch. So this completes the second row. Now for row 3, I'll turn my work around. Again, I'll grab this yarn just like this, twist it, then the stitch that we just formed will slip into our left needle. Now you can use many different ways to increase, but I found out that this one seems to be working very well for this particular project that I'm making. So now this will be our row 3, and we have 3 stitches on our needles. So the first stitch, I'll just pass it on the right needle. Now we have 2 stitches left, so we'll knit the first stitch, then we'll knit the second stitch. So as you can see here, we are increasing 1 stitch for every row. So in the beginning of each row, we are increasing 1 stitch. So this completes row 3. Now for row 4, I'll turn my work around. Again, I'll grab this yarn, I'll twist it, then I'll pass this stitch on my left needle. Now we have 4 stitches on our needles. So now again, I'll slip this first stitch into my right needle, then I have 3 stitches left, so I'll knit the first stitch, I'll knit the second stitch, and I'll knit the third stitch. So this completes row 4. Now I'll turn my work around again, and basically I'll be repeating the same thing over and over again until we have reached the desired length we want for our scarf or shawl. So now again, I'll grab this yarn just like this, twist it, then the stitch that we just formed, I'll pass it on the left needle. So now again, I will slip this first stitch on my right needle, and now we have 4 stitches on the left needle. So I'll knit the first stitch, knit the second stitch, knit the third stitch, and then knit the fourth stitch. So this completes row 5. So basically we just have to repeat this until our work reaches our desired length. It's totally up to you how long you want your triangle scarf or a triangle shawl to be. So I used 2 balls of yarn. This is how much I have left from my second ball of yarn, and I don't know if I mentioned, but each ball of yarn has 108 yards, like around 5 ounces. Now I'm just gonna finish off. So honestly, for this particular yarn, you don't really have to make any fancy pattern because it will not be visible. So all the hard work and the details that you will put into maybe a fancy pattern will just go to waste, because when you work with this yarn, it's not really about a pattern, it's about the yarn. You can just make a very simple pattern. In this case, in my case, I just knitted every row, and it works perfectly. It's super soft and it's really, really amazing. For this last row, I will not increase in the beginning of the row, so I will knit the first stitch, then I'll knit the second stitch. Then with my left needle, I'll grab this first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. So that was our first finish off. Now we have one stitch on our right needle, so now we'll knit the next stitch. Again, now we have 2 stitches on our needle. So the left needle, so I insert my left needle through this first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Again, now I'll knit the next stitch. I'll insert the left needle through this first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through the first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the needle through this first stitch, pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through the first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through the first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through this first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through this first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through the first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. Knit the next stitch. Insert the left needle through the first stitch and pass it over the second stitch. So you see what we have so far. This is how our finish off looks. It looks actually quite neat. So yeah, so we just repeat this until we reach the end of this row and we only have 1 stitch left on our needles. So now that I have only 1 stitch on my needles, I will just chain 1 and then I'll cut this yarn. So now I will just weave these ends in. And it's actually quite easy to weave these ends in because of the yarn. So they kind of just disappear. I'll just trim this yarn. So it's like a reversible scarf or shawl. You can wear it either way. So the person I made this for, they wanted it to be in this size. They kind of wanted to be able to use it as a shawl, but also as a scarf. So it's 22 inches long and 45 inches wide. So I wanted to make some tassels for this shawl. I don't think it will work because, as you can see here, this yarn unravels. I think it's called unravels. So it will look like a total mess. Because when you look at the yarn itself right now, it doesn't appear to be that thin. You know, it's not too thick, it's not too thin, it's just like a perfect size. But once you work with it, once you make your project, it appears thicker. But the thing about it is actually that it feels very, very, very soft, and it will definitely keep you warm. And there are no holes right there through the middle. And that's because I used the knitting needles in a couple sizes smaller than they recommended. So I hope you guys like this video, and thank you so much for watching.